What is up, Outlier Militia? Welcome back to Outlier Fantasy, the channel that gives great fantasy football advice every single week, and today is no different. Not only are we going to go over and talk about must-add players in Week 13 that can push you either for a playoff spot or keep you at the top so you have a first-round bye, there are plenty of players to still add in Week 13, and we also have 3 Thanksgiving games to cover, and we're going to break them down matchup by matchup so that you're setting your best fantasy football lineup possible this week. Week 13 is massive. Maybe you're fighting for that playoff spot. Maybe you've already clinched that playoff spot. But nonetheless, Week 13 has players that we need to be adding to keep our fantasy football team at the top of our fantasy leagues. So kick back, grab your favorite bev, grab your favorite snack, and depending on when you're watching this video, maybe you're grabbing a plate of Thanksgiving food, but regardless, we're all going to feast on these Week 13 waiver wire ads and matchup breakdowns. So let's roll the intro. There are 2 tight ends that we should be at least monitoring, if not adding onto our fantasy football teams. Both of these tight ends came back from an injury that they suffered during this season, returned back and didn't really seem to miss a beat or didn't miss any of the target share whatsoever as they were collecting whatever they could. Let's talk about Brenton Strange and Mike Gesicki. Brenton Strange came back and clearly was Trevor Lawrence's favorite target, aside from the other team, of course. Brenton Strange caught all 5 of his targets, so 5 receptions for 93 yards, and it seems like, just like where he picked off last year, this is probably going to be Trevor Lawrence's favorite target, or at least his most reliable. Even if I didn't need a tight end, I would be stashing Brenton Strange because I don't want anybody in my league to be able to pick up a quality starting tight end. So for those reasons, even if you don't need one, I'm sure some of you probably out there do need some tight end help, maybe been rotating different guys like a Colston Loveland here and there, and I'm going to be adding him in as many leagues as I possibly can. Mike Gesicki, albeit didn't have that great of a fantasy week in his debut, but saw 5 receptions. He was being one of the more targeted players. I get it, Jamar Chase wasn't playing, but now T. Higgins is going to be out. In my mind, I still think that even though Jamar Chase is at the top of the pecking order, the top of the target share, Joe Burrow's going to have to throw to somebody that's not him or Chase Brown, and I think that's where we fit in Mike Gesicki as a reliable tight end that maybe we could stream down the line. Between these 2 tight ends, Brenton Strange and Mike Gesicki, I definitely believe that Brenton Strange has more starting value today. Next, I want to talk wide receivers. So here are 2 wide receivers that we should be adding. Let's start first with Jaden Higgins, who has really come along lately for a wide receiver of the Houston Texans room. Maybe that'll change when CJ Stroud comes back, but regardless, we know that when rookies in general coming out of the bye week, they tend to get more usage. The playbook starts to expand for them a little bit. And that's exactly what you're seeing with Jaden Higgins right now. If you go through his fantasy game log, you're gonna see stinkers after the bye week, but there have been more great games than not. And in 4 out of his last 6 games, he's seen at least 7 targets in those 4 games. So yeah, he has 2 stinkers. I will acknowledge those games. But when he doesn't have a stinker, he's very involved in the offense, Jaden Higgins. And for that reason, he's got to be worth at least a stash, even if you can't play him. Next, I want to talk about John Mechie. This is someone that we've spoke about earlier on in the channel as somebody that I potentially like as a Jets wide receiver. I don't think these touchdowns are going to continue, but if we're being honest, he's the only separator the Jets have in the wide receiver room. Again, we probably don't feel great about starting a Jets wide receiver ever, but if you're in need of wide receiver help, if you're in need of getting a flex play every single week, maybe you're in a 14-man league, go ahead and grab John Mechie. Why not? Albeit the receptions aren't always there, but his last 2 games, he's had at least 45 receiving yards or more, which is a good sign that this is a player that knows how to get open. Finally, I want to talk about Devin Neal, running back of the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara may not miss too much time with his injury, but I think going forward, it's safe to assume that Devin is at least being sprinkled into this offense on occasion, if not going to be the starter. And as a handcuff, I think that's definitely worth rostering. He's somebody that catches passes out of the backfield. No, he's not fast as Alvin Kamara. Not many guys are as fast as prime Alvin Kamara anyway. Devin Neal is twitchy in open space. He may not be the fastest downhill runner, as I just stated, but nonetheless, this could be a guy that's going to end up getting a bulk of the carries, kind of like how Kendre Miller saw his run at the end of last year. This could be a guy that they lean on for running back production, and it would be stupid not to add him if you have a roster spot for him. Now let's go ahead. This is what you're really here for. Thanksgiving matchup, full breakdown. Let's start right away with the first game that's going to be at noon. Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. Me personally, division matchup aside, I'm really excited for this game because we have a juggernaut offense of the Detroit Lions going up against a very, very good defense in the Green Bay Packers. Over the last 4 weeks, the Packers defense is allowing 13 points per game. There is a caveat to that. Jordan Love over the last 4 weeks has not been a great quarterback, which has hindered their ability to win these games. Like I said, Jordan Love has struggled over the last 4 weeks. He has 2 passing touchdowns, an interception, and a fumble lost in 4 games. Yes, 2 passing touchdowns in his last 4 games. And if the Packers want to keep up in this game and actually make it a competition, they're going to need Jordan Love to throw those passing touchdowns. Why? Because the Lions in 3 out of their last 4 games have scored at least 24 points. And maybe Jared Goff hasn't been the best quarterback over the last 4 games, but I'll tell you one thing, 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions can get the job done for you. It wouldn't be surprising if Josh Jacobs did suit up and play in this Thanksgiving game, or maybe last Sunday the late inactive is just a mental gymnastics so the Lions don't know who they're going up against. But if Josh Jacobs is not playing, Emmanuel Wilson is a must start. Josh Jacobs is a must start if he's in the lineup. And if they're both active and playing, I would assume that Emmanuel Wilson gets about 25-30% of the touches in this backfield, while Josh Jacobs is still the workhorse guy that's going to dominate the backfield. And while Romeo Doubs has cooled off lately, if the Packers are going to score points and keep up with this Lions offense, I think that makes Romeo Doubs a strong start. Maybe not a must start, but a strong start at that. But be careful because the Lions have been stingy in terms of yards per rush against them. So maybe a hobbled Josh Jacobs could be limited to some extent, or Emmanuel Wilson will not find himself having a 2-touchdown game like last week. But where the Lions can be exposed and attacked on defense is big chunk and explosion plays. And I think that makes Christian Watson a strong start in this game as well. All it takes is one 40-yard touchdown to make it worth it for you, albeit he's very boom or bust. But if we can take advantage of how the Lions give up a bunch of chunk plays, I think that means Christian Watson is a go this week. And if you have any Lions players, yes, the Packers defense has been very good, but you're probably starting all of them. Maybe you can replace Jared Goff with another quarterback depending on your league, but most of us 12, 14-man league teams, we're not going to have the luxury of sitting Jared Goff. So start him, temper your expectations on him. But guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even Jameson Williams have to be must start. I expect J-Mo to redeem himself for his donut last week and probably give us some fireworks on Thanksgiving. Now let's move on to the next game of Thanksgiving. That would be the Cowboys and the Chiefs. And they're playing in Dallas, Texas, and this should be a fun one if you have any Kansas City wide receivers. Rashee Rice should have a monster day against the secondary. Xavier Worthy, it's been a rough go for you this year if you've started him every week. I think you got to play him regardless, and Travis Kelce is must start. And if you have Kareem Hunt, I would temper your expectations. I'm not going to say you cannot play Kareem Hunt, but something to keep in mind is that ever since the Cowboys came out of the bye week, they have been very good at stopping running backs. Yes, maybe these offenses have had some help along the way to help them out and stop the run by getting in their own way, but the Cowboys have given up 90 rushing yards in the last 2 games. That's almost unheard of. No, I don't think that's sustainable, but I don't think we could expect Kareem Hunt to have a 90-yard day and a touchdown in this one. And on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs defense is very good at stopping the run, so I would temper expectations on Javonte Williams. No, he hasn't had his monster explosion 28-point games, but if you got to play him, roll him out, maybe only get you 12 points, but that might just be enough to get you by. CeeDee Lamb should never be sad. I understand George Pickens is having better stats every single week than CeeDee Lamb, it feels like, but I think it's just more of we need to have a conversation about how good George Pickens is in fantasy, and he is obviously a must-start player this week. We all know and understand that in total PPR points, JSN is at the top in a league of his own, but who is right there, number 2 in fantasy points at the wide receiver position all year long? That would be George Pickens. No, not CeeDee Lamb. George Pickens is number 2. Not Puka, not Drake London, not any of these elite guys that we know are studs. George Pickens is second to JSN. That is wild. And since week 3, I know a little crazy measurement, but a lot of crazy things happen in the first couple weeks of the season. Since week 3, it's JSN in a league of his own. It's George Pickens right under him. And then everybody else is after that. And it's really a big separation. So maybe we're dragging it a little bit when it comes to CeeDee Lamb. Is he better than is he the guy that we drafted him for? Maybe not, but it might not just be that. It might just be George Pickens is him. I would say you must start Dak, but keep in mind that Dak has the games where he goes Dak and then unfortunately does not give us a good fantasy performance. So you're either looking at a 27-point day like it was last week, if I remember correctly, or, one of those like 8.4, 9.4 games. But you kind of have to take the risk that he's going to ball out against the Chiefs. They need to win this game. The Chiefs do need to win this game, but the Chiefs defense doesn't seem like it's going to be too much of a problem for our guy Dak over here. Tyler Warren was kept in check last week against this Chiefs defense, but I would expect Dak Prescott to find his favorite target, Jake Ferguson, over and over and over again, because that's just what he does. Now it's time for Thursday night under the lights, and we get Bengals versus Ravens in Joe Burrow's first game back from injury, and Jamar Chase is back. It's great to see that the Bengals are getting Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase back this week, because if I'm being honest, if they had both of those players last week, they might have beat the Patriots, and I hate to admit that, and of course there's no way to really prove that, but if you watch the game, I think they would have had a shot if they played Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in that one. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and Chase Brown are must-starts this week. It can't just be Chase Brown and Jamar Chase catching all of the passes here, and I think that's where my waiver wire addition, Mike Gesicki, really shines. There's going to be an uptick in targets for him now that T. Higgins is not there. And I understand Mike Gesicki is not T. Higgins, but at the end of the day, the ball's got to get around. The ball has to disperse to different targets, and I think that's where Mike Gesicki fits right in. He can play the third fiddle in a passing offense that's going to have a lot of pace. We've seen in the past, the Cincinnati Bengals offense does have a high pace of play when Joe Burrow is their quarterback. A lot of attempts and a lot of completions in those offenses. So why not Mike Gesicki? Now let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Since Lamar Jackson has come back from injury, he's had one amazing MVP level Lamar Jackson game, and the rest have been, I'll just say, disappointing. It's a short week also for the Ravens. Not saying it's not for the Bengals, but does this mean we're going to see Lamar take off and run out of the pocket even less than he's already doing, considering he's only got a few days before he's got to go back out and play again? That concerns me. The Bengals defense is supposed to be a fantasy-friendly matchup for us, so we do have to roll out Lamar, even though there are some concerns and doubts about this play. We still got to roll him out. He's still Lamar. He could be MVP Lamar on any given Sunday, or in this case, Thursday. And along with that, Derrick Henry is a must-start player. Zay Flowers is a must-start player because he is the wide receiver one when Lamar Jackson is under center. That passing offense goes at Zay Flowers' pace. And Mark Andrews, though he's boomer bust, I would roll him out and give him another shot this week because the Bengals defense is very fantasy friendly to the tight end position. And if you don't believe me, ask someone who started Hunter Henry last week how good the Bengals defense was for them, because Hunter Henry put on a show. And that's going to wrap it up for our Week 13 waiver wire and matchup breakdowns for Thanksgiving. We'll definitely make sure we get at some point to cover maybe the Black Friday games, maybe just the rest of the Sunday and Monday games. Definitely keep you updated on that. But I do want to take this time of the video, being that Thanksgiving is coming up, and maybe you're watching this video on Thanksgiving. I just want to say that I personally am so grateful for everyone that watches these videos on YouTube, shows love and support. Thank you to friends, family, and even people that I've met along the way on this journey. Thank you for rocking out with me. Thank you for being subscribed. Thank you for watching, taking the time out of your day to leave any kind of comment whatsoever, positive or negative. I'm truly thankful for these experiences. And for those of you at home, let's remember that fantasy football is just a game. Make sure you go. Grab your loved one. Grab your mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, whatever it may be. And just tell them that you're thankful for them. That little appreciative thank you, or just being able to speak to that person and just let them know. Make sure you grab your loved one. Tell them you're thankful for them. Because fantasy football is just a game at the end of the day. This game will be here forever, but unfortunately, the people that we spend the holidays with are not going to be there with us every single year. So make sure you give them a hug, give them a kiss, whatever it is, and just tell them and remind them that you're grateful for them. That's all the time I have for you guys today. Happy Thanksgiving to each and every single one of you out there that kicks back and watches my videos. I truly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. My name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy, and I will see you in the next video. Wow, you stuck to the end of this video? Thank you so much. If you're new here, make sure you check out one of these videos on the screen right now. And don't forget, before you leave, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any fantasy football videos on this channel. And that's all I got for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.